You are live, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much. Nice to see you, Sasha Helmke, our clerk. We have most of our members of council present for this special council meeting. This is the special council meeting for planning public meeting session. And we've changed our procedures a little bit here at Clearview Township Council to hold special or our planning meetings in a singular meeting on a Wednesday. So this is the first time we're doing it since it's changed. So I want to welcome everybody here, and we'll see how it turns out. And if you have any feedback, please share it with the clerk and myself, and we'll be happy to take it into consideration for future. All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we've got a pretty straightforward agenda. First item is approval of the agenda. Or recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated April 27, 2022 for the special council meeting. And can I have a mover and seconder on this file, please? Where are we at? Mr. Deputy Mayor and Mr. Broderick. Thank you. Anything to add or subtract? None. We'll call it all those in favor. In favor. And that carries. Thank you. All right. Disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Has anybody got any disclosures in regards to the files or the work we're doing here today? All right. If anything comes up during the meeting, please bring it forward, and we'll deal with it appropriately. And so at this time, then, Council, I'll ask that we'll rise to the public meeting of the Public Meeting Act. And as usual, as has been our procedure, Deputy Mayor Burton has been the chair of those public meeting sessions, as you recall. Deputy Mayor Burton, being that he's working remotely today, very remotely, has asked me to chair the meeting. So I'll be happy to do it on your behalf, Barry. No problem. So I have the script here to read, and then we'll get on with our meetings. So we will now initiate the public meeting portion of tonight's agenda. We invite you to comment on the applications being presented tonight and to engage in the process with us. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Township of Clearview on an application being discussed this evening, please email the planning staff that is handling the application, and their email will be provided in the presentations that we're going to be seeing. Please be advised that your comment or request to be notified will form part of the public record. Your communication, any personal information therein, will be made available to the public unless you expressly request for its removal. Also, if a person or body does not make any oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the township with respect to the proposed applications before the decision is made or a bylaw is passed, then they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Further, the following public meetings will involve a brief presentation by our planning staff, an opportunity for the applicant or their agent to present their application, a period of public comments or questions, and an opportunity for questions by council committee. So at this time, we're going to move to our first public meeting session. This will have, we'll begin with file number 2021-050ZB. It's in regards to 2745, the 3-4 side road in Clearview Township, and it's on this evening's agenda. Planning staff will now start with a brief presentation concerning the application. And so I welcome Rosalind Workman. Hello, Rosalind. I understand you have a full presentation for us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Measures, and good evening, Council. Just give me a second. I'm going to share a screen with you with the presentation.
Okay.
Can everyone see that screen? Perfect, thank you. So tonight we are attending the public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment 2021-050-ZB, known and on the subject lands 2745 3-4 side road, formerly of Sunnydale Township. The subject lands are shown in this map, and they are outlined in hatched. And as stated, they are 2745 3-4 side road. Again, the subject lands are outlined in red in this picture, air photograph. The existing policy framework on the subject lands is that the current Township of Clearview official plan designation is extractive industrial and mineral aggregate resource area. The current zoning bylaw categories are Old Sunnydale bylaw applies, and agricultural AG, environmental protection EP, and hazard land overlay FP. And this is just a map showing the existing official plan. The subject lands are outlined in red, and the gray indicates the mineral extraction resources area, and the sort of hatched gray, light gray areas, the mineral aggregate resources area. This map depicts the existing zoning bylaw map. And again, the subject lands are outlined in red. You'll see the majority of the lands are actually zoned old bylaw applies. And again, as explained earlier, it is that the Sunnydale bylaw zones this land extractive industrial M3, and that is the bylaw that applies on these lands. There's also some land that is currently zoned agricultural AG, and there is significant portions of the property that are currently zoned environmental protection EP. This map just shows again the hazard land overlay, or the FP, which is in the blue, and that is of course the lands that are regulated also by the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. The proposal. So the township has received a zoning bylaw amendment application and 2 consent applications for the former aggregate pit owned by Lafarge. It was called the Casey Pit. This former aggregate pit is no longer in operation, and the aggregate license has been surrendered. Environmental impact studies have been submitted in support of the current application and the location of where environmental EP zones should be located. The zoning from the old bylaw applies, which is extractive industrial M3 zone, agricultural zone AG, environmental protection EP, and they are now going to be changed to rural RU, rural exception RU-19, and environmental protection EP. And as I stated, the current extractive industrial zone M3 is actually regulated under the former Sunnydale bylaw, and that's 1553-89. The other zones are currently regulated under the Clearview Township zoning bylaw 0654. And just to explain a little bit about the exception 19, it will recognize the undersized lot frontage for a rural lot that is proposed to be created, and that is lot A. And it's proposed to have 17.8 meters of frontage, where the bylaw in the rural zone would normally require 45 meters. And this is just showing the proposed zoning. So as stated, lot A, it may be a little bit hard to see, but this will be the lot that's actually going to have the exception on it, as it has a smaller frontage. This just shows the proposed building envelope, so gives you a little snapshot on how the proposed lots will be created. The red lines show the lot, so this will be lot A, lot B, and lot C is the larger parcel. Due to the environmental significance on these lands, the area out sort of shown in yellow or orange is actually the proposed building lot areas. Notice and circulation. Notice of the subject zoning bylaw amendment has been given in accordance with the Planning Act on April the 7th of 2022, and it was done through mailing of a notice to all of the neighbors and posting of a sign on the property. Details of this application and supporting materials have been made available to the public and have been circulated to the relevant commenting agencies. This map shows the circulation map to the properties that were mailed the notice, and those were the properties that are now in that yellowy color. The subject lands are shown in red. At this time, at the public meeting, I will just give you a bit of a summary on the public comments that were received. And at this time, we only had one of the neighbors who lives to the north of the subject lands comment on this. And the comment was concerning an easement that they discovered that was across their lands in favor of Lafarge. Lafarge has subsequently been able to provide the legal documents for this easement to that neighbor, and the plan is to address this easement on the neighbor's lands in the future. And that concludes all the comments that we received in writing. Just for anyone who would like to provide comments, here is my contact information, and you can also find that on our website. And just to highlight the process to date, right now we're at the public meeting stage. Next, staff will consider comments received. At some point, staff will make a recommendation report to council, and council will have the opportunity to either approve or deny the application. From that, there will be a notice mailed out and an appeal period. If no appeal is received, then the decision of council will come into force and effect. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Rosalind.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you'll be available to answer any questions and stay on the call here if members of the committee have any questions.
Yes.
So at this point then, I'll ask, does the applicant or their agent wish to provide any brief presentation on their application? I understand that we do have a representative on board, Mr. Brian Zeman. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Brian. Nice to connect with you here on this call. And Mal Wierzynski is with us. Hello, Mal. Nice to see you again. So welcome aboard. I'm not sure who's going first, but I'll put it to you each. Go ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and members of the public. Your Worship, it will just be myself presenting this evening, and both Mal and myself are available to answer any questions that may arise. I was just wondering if I could share my screen.
I'm sure the clerk can work that out with you.
Is everyone able to see a presentation up?
I've got it. Go ahead. Yep.
Excellent. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present tonight. Again, my name is Brian Zeman. I'm a land use planner with MHBC, and I've been retained by Lafarge to assist them with a rezoning application for their property located at 2745 34 Side Road, Sunnydale, which is located just north of County Road 9. I'd like to thank Ms. Workman for doing an excellent job summarizing the application, and in that I will try to be brief this evening. Today I am here to present to the township and the community what I believe to be a good news story that involves an aggregate site that has finished, an application to downzone the property and remove rural industrial uses and increase long-term environmental protection, as well as to create a lot fabric for long-term use within the municipality. So the subject site is 49.26 hectares, or approximately 122 acres, and it's outlined in red. And as mentioned, this site was a previous sand and gravel pit licensed under the Aggregate Resources Act. Lafarge has completed rehabilitation of the property and applied to the province to surrender the Aggregate Resources Act license. This Aggregate Resources Act was formally surrendered by the province in 2019. The existing zoning that still contains on the site is a mixed zoning on the property, and it does not currently reflect either the current use or the current condition of the property. The majority of the property, as shown in gray, is still zoned extractive industrial, and this use would still permit rural industrial uses on site, including an aggregate transfer station, asphalt plant, and ready mix plant. Part of the site shown in light green is zoned environmental protection, and this reflects existing environmental areas on site. This part of the zoning will be retained on site, and as shown on my next slide, there is a significant increase to the proposed environmental protection zoning on the subject property. The last part of the zoning that currently exists on the property is shown in dark green. It's zoned agricultural. However, due to the past extraction on the site, this site does not constitute an agricultural area, and there's other zoning that would be more appropriate for consideration. In preparation of the proposed zoning bylaw application that has been submitted to the township, there was a request for a detailed planning analysis as well as an environmental impact assessment to properly characterize the current condition of the land and recommend the most appropriate zoning for the subject site. As a result of this technical work, this is a sort of a simplified summary of the proposed zoning on site. The area in light green is the area that is now proposed to be zoned to environmental protection, and this represents a significant increase from the existing zoning in place and represents 77% of the total site would qualify for environmental protection. And that's reflective of the rehabilitation work and the natural succession that has occurred on the property based on the ecological assessments completed. The remaining areas that did not qualify for environmental protection are proposed to be zoned rural, and these are consistent with the areas that Ms. Workman showed earlier as the areas that would be subject to proposed building envelopes. Although not formally part of the public meeting tonight, there was a concurrent application that was submitted for the creation of 2 new rural residential lots on the subject site. This application will be subject to a future committee of adjustment application before the township. It is being submitted concurrently with the zoning application and is being reviewed by the agencies concurrently. I did think it was important to share the details of this proposal too, because the 2 applications are linked indirectly. If the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, it would ultimately allow for the creation of 2 new building envelopes that would result in 3 rural residential building envelopes being located on the property. And as Ms. Workman identified, each of the properties have an identified area that's located outside of the environmental protection zone that would ultimately allow for a future single family residence on the property. In summary, the proposed zoning bylaw in combination with the consent application will ultimately transfer a former sand and gravel pit within the township into what I would characterize as 3 beautiful rural lots that would allow for 1 single family residence on each and would significantly increase long-term protection through the proposed zoning for the long-term integrity of the sites. So I'd like to thank members of council tonight for the opportunity to present, and if there are any questions from council or members of the public, we're here tonight to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. If you could release the sharing at this time, and excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Zeman and Mal. So we'll get right back to you guys if there's any questions coming up. However, at this point, I do want to ask the clerk, can you advise if there's anyone who has provided any requests to make any oral submissions or anyone who's in the waiting room in regards to this subject, and would you like to speak to the application?
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have 1 oral submission for this application, and that's by Angela McGurr. I'm just promoting her to a panelist, so just one moment.
Sure.
Hi, Angela. You're in the public meeting now. You can turn on your camera and your microphone.
Sorry, I don't have camera. We're in the country and I'm on internet without a camera. I do live on the north side of the proposed planning amendment. My concern is the one that backs directly upon me, which would be the approximate 10 acres. I was just wondering, since we're dealing with a shortage on frontage, how is this going to be addressed.
Okay, Angela, first of all, any questions be direct through the chair, and I'll see if we can find somebody who can help you with an answer. Perhaps for the benefit of members of the committee and anybody else, could you just advise the address that you're at so that we can associate that with the lot you're speaking about?
I'm at 6051 concession 5. So I'm on the north side of your proposed lot A, I believe it is.
Okay. So can I go to Rosalind first? Rosalind, do you have any comment about that? And then perhaps the applicant. Ros?
Yeah, so sorry, Angela, so just so that I understand, you're just wondering how the shortage of the lot will be addressed?
That's correct.
So how we're addressing it is that it will be recognized in the zoning bylaws so that when someone potentially comes and purchases, they will be able to get a building permit because the bylaw will look at recognizing the 17.8 meters of frontage as the frontage.
So if we have a mandatory minimum, how will?
Sorry, I think you cut out there. I only heard how would you?
I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, Ross. Can you just explain, Rosalind, why we make recommendations that we can have lots that are perhaps shorter than the current bylaw? Or less,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure. So the reason that there's frontages is that that's one of the provisions in the current zone for a rural zone. In this case, bylaws are meant to help to reflect the current situation. And so when they go to create the lot, in this case, the lot frontage can only be 17.8 meters. And that's why we're here kind of today as one of the items to look at and address. In my professional opinion, I don't believe a frontage of that size will impact this particular situation in that this will be a driveway area, not a building lot area, and that the building lot will actually probably be more to the east of like the center of that.
Angela, did you hear some of that? You're having some audio difficulties.
Yeah, I did have some audio, but I think I got the most of it there.
Okay. Have you got any further questions about it, or do you need me to ask other persons on your behalf?
No, I'll reserve the right to question at a later date. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for participating and joining us and going through this process. Virtual public meetings are always technically a challenge, so I appreciate your patience and your diligence in getting involved. Thank you. Madam Clerk, was there anything further? I think you only said there was one, but I'll just check.
That's correct, Your Worship. It was just one oral submission for this file.
All right. Okay, members of committee, members of council, this is your opportunity if you wish to make a comment or ask a question about any of the staff or the applicant's agents. This is your opportunity. So I'll simply look for your either raise of your yellow card or your hand, and I'll go right to you. Mr. Lamers will be first, and then Mr. Broderick, and then Mr. McKechnie. Go ahead, Mr. Lamers.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, Brian, on your first screenshot there's a little pie shape between lot A and lot B on 3-4 Side Road.
Yes, there is. There's a very thin sliver there, Brian. Maybe you can explain that.
I have, through you, Mr. Chair, Councilor Lammers, I apologize. There was some research into that configuration. It is a small sliver that is not owned by Lafarge, and I'm not sure, Mal, if you recall offhand who the ownership of that portion of that sliver was. It's a very odd parcel that was historically created.
Yeah.
Mal, have you got a comment there?
Sorry, through you, Your Worship. No, I can't recall the name. We had looked at it a number of years ago, and there is no residence on that parcel. I think we were trying to find out through the pin fabric and the lawyers who it belonged to, but I don't think we got very far on it.
All right. So on that question, Councillor Lamers, I'd like to just jump in and ask if the staff can confirm that distribution of notification has been included, whoever the owner is of that sliver. Roz or Mara?
Yeah, we would have mailed, that was part of the circulation that we showed, so they would have been mailed something, and I don't believe we received anything back.
Okay. Just want to confirm that it was distributed. Go ahead, Mr. Lamers.
Yeah, like that's what, 2 or 3 meters wide, so that would possibly bump that 17 up to 20. So, and then the second one is, why are they retaining lot C?
So that's Mr. Zeman and Mal. We get a comment about lot C.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, and again, Councillor Lamers, the retained lots is sort of a technical term within the planning framework. It's because it's one full lot and there's 2 lots to be created. So we identify them as 2 lots to be created and then retained lot. But if the question's about, is it Lafarge's intention to retain long-term ownership of that lot? No, their interest is try to create 3 future building envelopes for future sale, so they can sell them for future single-family residential within the township.
All right, thank you. Yeah, they're not going to retain the lot. They're just separating the 2 off the main lot.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
Thank you, Councillor Lamers. You're comfortable? We'll move on to our next member. Thank you. All right, Mr. Broderick, you're next, and then I believe Mr. McKechnie flashed his card. So, Councillor Broderick, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. But John asked the questions I was going to ask.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you, Councillor Broderick. If there's nothing, then I'll go to Councillor McKechnie. Hello, Councillor McKechnie.
Good evening, Your Worship. Excuse me. Just wondering, the environmental protection zone is going to be expanded quite a bit there. Can a structure or home building be built in the environmental protection zone, or does the actual building have to be placed in the rural zone? That's the first question. And the second question for Roz is that can those lots are quite large. Can they ever be severed, further? Can they? So there's 3 nice big building lots there. Will those ever be able to be severed further under the current rules right now? So.
Good question. Rosalind, to yourself and/or Mara, who's with us. Go ahead, Roz.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McKechnie. So the first question, I believe, was about whether a building could be built in the area outside of the EP in the areas. Yeah, I believe there's a sufficient.
No, sorry, I'm just wondering if a building can be built in the EP zone.
Oh, in the EP, right. Sorry,
yeah.
Too many questions all at once. Small brain.
Yeah.
Anyways, the EP zone, no structures or buildings at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, sorry, remind me of the second question.
The second question, so those are fairly large lots there, those 3 lots, building lots. Just wondering if under the current rules, can someone come along, buy one of those lots and then maybe apply to the township to have it severed further into more building lots? Just for the neighbors around there, are they looking at 3 buildings, or are they going to be looking at 12 buildings at some point?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McKechnie. I believe the short answer is 3 buildings, 3 single detached dwellings. The official plan and the county policies would not permit any further severances on that. And furthermore, I think the sensitivity of the lands, the EP, wouldn't support any more severances anyways.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's it. Thanks.
Can I have a clarification then, if I can, Ms. Workman? While that would be severances that the councillor is asking for residential properties, there would be opportunity for those properties to have outbuildings, as in smaller outbuildings, sheds, that type of thing. It's not just one building, it would be one residential building and then alternate buildings on site.
Correct. And they could potentially have like a detached apartment which is what's in the zone, right? So potentially 2 units, no more than that, but you're correct. They would be permitted residential detached, like a garage. They could have a drive shed and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that, we just want to be clear that it's not about specific housing. It's just about the lots are being created as residential rural lots. And so the uses are in our bylaw today, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from members of council or committee? All right. Well, then I tell you what, I think we're at the end of what this public meeting is all about. So I will read the concluding statement. This concludes and I'll thank everyone, first of all, for being here. This concludes the public meeting with respect to file number 2021-50 050 ZB 274534 Side Road for this evening's agenda. We want to thank all those that attended and provided comments for their interest in this matter. All input received with regard to the proposal will be fully considered by staff in their recommendation and by council in their decision with respect to this application. A report regarding the proposal will be prepared for council, who will make a decision concerning this matter at a future meeting. And so I'll close this portion of the public meeting. Thank the members and the representatives, Zeman and Wineski, for being here. And we're going to move on to our next meeting. Thank you. So we'll now proceed to the next public meeting, which is open. Where is it? It's respective file number 2022-007 ZB. It's at 35 Caroline Street West in Creemore in Clearview Township. And it's on this evening's agenda. Planning staff will now start with a brief presentation concerning the application. Roz, you're up again. Looks like you've got both files for tonight. So good to have you back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Again, just give me a moment and I'll share my presentation. And hopefully everyone can see that. Thank you. So tonight we're here for a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment, file number 2022-007 ZB, and it is on subject lands 35 Caroline Street West in Creemore. The subject lands are shown here in a gray and black hatched out area. And again, they're described as 35 Caroline Street West. This shows the subject lands and the air photo underneath. People may recognize these lands as the former Creemore Public School, and they do contain the school. And again, the subject lands are outlined in red. The existing policy framework, the current Township of Clearview official plan designation for the lands are residential and regulatory flood line. And the current zoning on the property is institutional IN, hazard land special policy FPSP, and hazard land overlay FP. This shows the current official plan designation of the lands. And again, the property is outlined in red. It is designated residential. The existing official plan also shows, this map here shows the regulatory flood line. So the subject lands is again shown in red, and the regulatory flood is this purple line on either sides of the Mad River. The existing zoning bylaw map shows the lands as being zoned institutional. And this shows the hazard land overlay, the FP, shown as the blue overlay. Again, these are lands also regulated by the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. And the current proposal, so the application applies to the former Creemore School property and the lands surrounding that school, which are all currently zoned institutional. The Creemore School is proposed to be zoned residential high density exception hold, so RS6-8 hold 25, and the surrounding lands, which contain 4 lots, will be zoned residential low density or RS3. There will also be a hold symbol, H25, applied to the residential high density exception hold. In this case, the residential high density exception hold will permit the creation of 11 residential units contained within the existing school building. The exception number 8 represents the following request for exemption to the current bylaw. So they're looking to reduce the minimum required interior side yard setback for the west property line, which would normally be 6.5 meters to 3.8 meters. They're looking to, at the outdoor parking area for the rear property line, to provide only 1.3 meters wide landscaping screen to screen the common area parking from the adjacent residential properties where the bylaw requires 3 meters. They are looking also at a reduction in the minimum required setback to a rear lot line for a common parking facility from 3 meters to 1.3. And they are looking also to increase the density of the units in the school to 36.7 units per hectare, where the bylaw requires 35 units per hectare. And finally, they are looking to allow for a larger detached accessory building where the bylaw permits 64 square meters. The proposal would provide a 252 meter detached covered parking structure. In addition, I thought I would just explain a little bit about what the hold 25 means and when it would be removed from the site. In this case, it would be removed when there is adequate municipal services available to service the development. And it would also need to have a site plan approval and have it be obtained with agreements being entered into with the township. So just in summary, the residential low density RS3 will be applied to the 4 residential lots surrounding the Creemore School, and the 11 residential units located in the school will also be subject to a site plan application and a condominium application. In total, the Creemore School and surrounding lands will be converted from an institutional use to a residential use and will provide, well, 15 units, but that's 11 residential and then 4 lots, residential lots. This site plan shows quite nicely what is proposed. So the bright yellow building is the existing school, and that is where the 11 residential units will be created. And to the back is the 22 parking spaces that is required under the bylaw. And then the light yellow shows the existing residential lots that will also be zoned through this bylaw. This is a rendering of what is proposed when they convert the school to residential units. And then in terms of notice and circulation, notice of the subject application zoning bylaw amendment has been given in accordance with the Planning Act on April the 7th, 2022, and it was done through mailing out of notices as well as posting a sign on the property. The details of the application and supporting materials have been made available to the public and have been circulated to the relevant commenting agencies. This is a map showing the subject lands, and in the orangey yellow color is all the properties that were actually mailed out the notice, and that constitutes 120 meters from the subject lands. At this point, I can summarize quickly for council the public comments that have been received to date. At this point, I can say that we've actually received about 9 comments. There were some additional supportive comments that were received after hours today and will be provided to council prior to the planning report coming forward. So in summary, some of the comments were that there are former students and neighbors who didn't actually provide written comments, but wish to be informed of future notices. So they have interest in this application and what will happen in the future. Some comments were that they are worried that the proposed changes to the school will impact the peace and enjoyment of their home and their neighborhood. Some have worried that the MVCA have removed all restrictions and approved this project, and they are concerned for drainage in this area. And they are concerned that with global warming, that there could be amplified weather events. We did get a positive comment from someone who visits Creemore often and wanted to share that they are very much looking forward to this project. And they quote, think it's awesome to see a passionate developer bringing the old landmark back to life, unquote. Some are worried about the loss of privacy. They're worried about 22 car parking lot and about 14 of those spaces being only located 1.3 meters from the rear property line. They're worried about whether there's enough visitor parking and worried that there could be congestion on the street should the visitor parking spill over. And they are also worried about floodplain risk. They are worried that there is no green space on the proposed plan. And one of the comments was that someone did contact a local realtor who said it would lower their home value and it would also limit the potential home buyers, as many potential buyers would not want to live close to a high density condo. Some are worried and wanted to comment that in the past there has been property maintenance issues on the current property. For example, long grasses and that shingles were missing off the roof. But they do note that they do support the development when it will help to clean up the property. Someone noted that they felt that keeping the institutional zone would maintain the historical appearance of the existing building. Someone wondered about the grading of the property and the impact to the surrounding properties and the possibility of their property being flooded. They also wondered about snow removal and the parking area being graded such that there wouldn't be any snow melt on other properties. Another comment was worried whether there was going to be sufficient sewage capacity to process waste from this development. As they mentioned that there were also additional homes already approved. Another comment was that they were worried about the parking lot being located to the rear of the property, as it might pose a noise issue for the homes that abut the property, especially at night. And the final comment was that the density is high compared to the density of the single detached dwellings in the area. For example, they state that they felt that there were 38 people proposed in this new area, whereas they calculated 14 people lived on Elizabeth West. And they just seemed that it was like that the density in this area was doubling in the amount of people. And that concludes the comments that I've received to date. This is my contact information, so should the public want to provide any more comments, I'm happy to receive them through email, or you can also give me a call. And then just in summary, just to tell where we are right now in the process, we're at the public meeting stage, and staff will continue to receive and consider comments received from the public. Staff will make recommendation report to council, and council will either approve or deny the application. And then of course there will be a notice mailed out and a 20-day appeal period. If there is no appeal, then the decision of council will come into force and effect. And that concludes my presentation.
Sorry. Mute button was being covered. Hello. Thank you, Rosalind. And again, another very thorough report. We appreciate that. And thank you for members of the public who have sent in their comments ahead of time. We appreciate that very much. So, Roz, do we have an applicant participating with us? Does the applicant or the agent wish to provide a brief presentation regarding the application? Oh, Celeste Phillips. Hello, Celeste. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Mayor Measures, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. And I do have a bit of a presentation here. I would like to note that I will take a few minutes, if you don't mind, Your Worship, because there were a number of comments, as you know. I think in total there were probably 9 pieces of correspondence, and I think 5 were raising concern and 4 were positive comments. So it did sound like a lot of concerns, but I think in general, the comments of concern probably come from 4 or 5 individuals. So my name is Celeste Phillips. I am a land use planning consultant, and I'm representing the owner of the property at 35 Caroline Street West. That is Fennelwood Court. And with me this evening is Dan Hurley, the president of Tatham Engineering, who is available to respond to servicing and engineering related questions. And also watching this public meeting is the owner, Mr. James Massey, and his architect advisor, Mr. David Winterton of ERA Architects. And as many of you know, the school here opened in 1917, operated for nearly 100 years and closed in 2014. And a 1-story addition was built on the west side of the building about 25 years ago. So Rosalind's done a fabulous job explaining the location of the property. My only comment to you is that it is important to note that the province, of course, is promoting intensification, and particularly residential intensification that is close to commercial areas. And this property is about a block from Mill Street. So the proposal is to recognize the 4 single detached lots, because those 4 lots are zoned institutional, and the more appropriate zoning for those 4 lots is single family residential, and then to rezone the school to a residential category as well. So this slide shows an aerial view. Of course, you can see the school located in this location here. And then there are 3 lots located to the west of the school and 1 lot located to the east at the corner of Collingwood Street. And all of those 4 residential lots are of comparable size to the existing residential community. Rosalind has gone over the development plan, and I'll just perhaps add a little bit of information to what she said. As she mentioned, the light yellow are the 4 residential lots. The darker yellow is the existing institutional building once used as a school. There is a need for major restoration to the interior of the school to remove the asbestos and mold. And a second story is proposed to be located on the west side of the building. The unit sizes for the condominiums are proposed to be between 700 square feet and 2,800 square feet. And I do want to make a point, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council, because I know this is a hot button issue, that there will not be short-term rentals of these condominium units. This would be specifically included in the offers of purchase and sale of the 11 condominium units, and it would be in the condominium documentation. I'm sure you've heard some of the horror stories associated with party houses and short-term rentals, particularly in the Collingwood area. 2 parking spaces are proposed in a covered parking area at the rear of the property. And it's important to note that this property would be subject to the site plan control process at the township, which is a process that follows the rezoning process. Rosalind has shown you the artist's rendering of the view of the building from Caroline Street, and this is the 2nd story addition that is proposed. It's important to note that the current zoning of this property is institutional, and that zoning permits uses such as a place of worship, a healthcare center, a daycare. Those are just a few of the examples that would already be permitted under the current zoning. So it's my opinion that the currently permitted institutional uses would result in more traffic and probably are less desirable uses in an established residential neighborhood such as this. The second artist rendering is a view of the condominium, the converted building to condominiums from the rear. And this slide shows the covered parking area, which is located at the back of the building in this location here. And I understand from the comments that the situation of the parking area and the particularly the covered parking area close to the rear property line is a concern for the residents in the area. And I'm happy to work with your planning staff as part of the site plan process to see if there's a way to perhaps move that parking a little further away from the rear lot line, or perhaps closer to the building so that it is not as offensive to the neighbors. It would be typical, however, that there would be a requirement by the township to install a 2-meter high tight board fence along that rear property line. That would be a standard separation buffer material in that instance. As Rosalind mentioned, there are site-specific exceptions that are being requested. I did want to point out that there is the need to recognize an existing side yard deficiency that has existed between the school and that first lot located to the west. So that's a longstanding side yard deficiency. And then as part, whoops, sorry, I'll just go back one slide. As part of the planning process, a pre-application meeting was held with township staff, and that is at the time when planning staff identify the types of reports that are needed as part of a complete application. And so this is the list of the reports that have been provided, and I understand that they have been made available to the public for review. The planning justification report that I wrote reviews the application in the context of provincial, county, and township planning policies. And it is my opinion as a land use planner that the rezoning application before you is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and conforms to both the County of Simcoe and the Township of Clearview official plan. In addition to the planning justification report, Tatham Engineering has prepared a functional servicing report and a flood hazard study. Those are also available for public review. And finally, as part of the submission, there are the artist renderings, which I've shown you this evening, as well as the concept plan that has been explained. So the next steps are for the consulting team to review the comments submitted in writing and those expressed at the meeting this evening, and then to respond to township staff in a written format, our responses to the comments that have been provided. And Mayor Measures, I do have 2 additional slides related to site servicing. Perhaps I will leave those for specific questions pertaining to engineering matters, because I am no engineer. And I think it's best that those slides are addressed by Dan Hurley from Tatham if there are specific questions regarding lot grading or site servicing. And finally, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thank you very much, Celeste. And I guess at this time, we could go directly to Dan Hurley if Dan would want to join us and share those 2 slides.
Okay, I will put them up.
You can do that together, and then I'll then go to questions. Is that comfortable for you? Hello, Dan. Nice to see you again. Welcome.
Is that showing on the screen for you or no?
I don't have it at this time.
Okay, let me just try again.
Perhaps not.
Do you see a site servicing plan now?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. So there's two slides here just before you speak, Dan, the site servicing plan and a site drainage plan. So Dan, if you want to just speak to those, I'd be happy to hear from you.
Certainly. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and public. As introduced, I'm Dan Hurley with Tatham Engineering, and we've been doing the work on this property. Included in our servicing report that's been submitted is this concept plan you see before you, which basically just presents that there are existing sewer and water services available within Caroline Street that we will be extending to the 4 single-family lots, and we will be reviewing and improving the water and sewer connections for the school to make sure they're up to code. And that's simply what this drawing presents, is just how this will be serviced off of Caroline Street. And the details are presented in our servicing report, and we'll be working with the Township Engineering Services Department and peer reviewers to make sure the detailed design is complete to their satisfaction. Moving on, I've got a general grading plan. There's 2 aspects of the grading that we've been looking at. The first is a floodplain management strategy and flood hazard assessment. We'll be dealing most extensively with the Conservation Authority on that matter. And what it shows at a fairly high level is that the school itself is high enough to be flood protected, and that the individual lots will have to look at the grading very closely to make sure that they're built in a safe manner, similar to other lots of record that wish to build within the town of Creemore. And specifically because dealing with the special policy area provisions and making sure the Conservation Authority and Township are content with that. As far as an overall drainage plan goes, there's going to be ample green space in the rear of the properties to collect any drainage and convey it from west to east towards the municipal drainage system along Collingwood Street, and ensure that no impacts to private properties are observed. And we'll be working with the proponent and township and trying to implement some innovative measures such as rain gardens and low impact techniques to make sure the drainage is dealt with in a proactive manner. And the details of all of that we'll be sorting out through our final design. And I think that summarizes most of the points I wanted to raise. And I'll turn it back to you, Celeste.
Thank you, Dan. So I will stop sharing and then turn it back to you, Mayor Measures.
Great. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Dan. Certainly, please stand by if there's any questions from members of the committee. And our staff are also there. Rosalind is there. So at this point, then, I need to go to the clerk. Hello, Madam Clerk. Welcome back. Can you advise if there's anyone providing a request to make an oral submission, or there's someone who's in the waiting room who would like to speak to the application? Any questions can be directed through me to these fine individuals as well as our staff.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have one oral submission for this application, and that's from Rob Wakowiak. He's just entered the meeting as a participant. Oh,
you just popped up. Hello, Rob. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. So I'll speak when I'm told to.
Sure. Well, you're in our public meeting now. Members of the committee are here, and members of the applicant staff, as well as our municipal staff, are available. So if you have a question, you can direct it through me as the chair, and I'll see if I can help find somebody who can help you answer.
Okay. More so, I just have some comments, but I'd first like to thank you, Your Worship, and fellow councillors for some time this evening. My name is Rob Walkowiak. The W's are pronounced as V's in my last name. It's that Polish heritage that messes some people up sometimes. But again, thank you for allowing me some time this evening. I live at 38 Caroline Street, so across the street from the Creemore School. We've lived here for about 5 years and enjoyed every minute of it. And so my comments tonight are really just in support of the application. and the proposal of additional residential units along Caroline Street and in the town of Creemore. I think when you look at the land itself, it's been commonly used as the unofficial dog park, I think, in Creemore. You can talk to many residents about that. But I think based on the severance or the plan to sever and separate or create lots in similar size to lots down the street, I think is a measure. And then in terms of convert school to residential, I think that's a great use. Right now it's sitting empty, and we'd love to have some more neighbors near us. And I think my last comment just has to do with, I guess, the housing type. And from my experience, I think strong communities are made with a variety of housing types, creating housing ownership for a variety of people. I think that does come through different types of housing, whether it be condos, apartments, or single family dwellings or detached homes. So
he dropped off. I noticed he was having some connectivity problems there. Madam Clerk, if he comes back on, looks like he is. Hi, Rob. Internet challenges?
Yeah.
It's okay. You're comfortable to turn off your camera if you wish to save some.
I'm not sure I got cut up there, but I was just going to conclude by saying I look forward to seeing more about the development. I support it, and I think it's a great, I guess, conversion for what the current property is. So I'll leave it there, and thank you for the time this evening.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Rob. If you have no questions, I appreciate you joining us here in the call and participating in our public meeting. So thank you very much.
Okay.
No further questions? Okay, great. All right, thank you very much, Rob. And I'm going to move on then in our procedure. I'm going to go to members of council, members of our committee, if there's any questions, if they'd like to have a comment or have a question to the staff of the applicant. This is their opportunity. We have everyone here, and I'm recognizing Councillor Broderick first. Is there any other members? Councillor Walker and Mr. McKechnie. Okay, Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Mr. Broderick first, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the artist rendering, I noticed the bell tower is to be retained and appears to be enclosed. Is it intended to be retrofitted as a enclosed observation deck?
Good question. That to Celeste or perhaps even the architect. Celeste, we'll start with you.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I've spoken to the owner, Mr. Massey, about that because he does certainly want to keep that as an important historical component. But I honestly don't know that it's going to be an observation tower. Perhaps James Massey could answer. I think he's part of the meeting this evening. Sorry to put you on the spot, JMO.
Mr. Massey or Mr. Winterton, any comment about the former bell tower? I guess it still is a bell tower. There's no bell in it right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear me there, Mr. Mayor. This will definitely be something to look at. Like the architect needs to get in there and really determine what parts of the building will be accessible and how we'll go about maintaining the characteristic of that roof line. We love the look of that copper roof, and it definitely would be retained the way it is. The built-in is just looks a bit more built-in because it's black, but there'd be no extra building of what is already there. It's gonna be as much retained as possible to be structurally sound, of course. But as far as an outlook tower, it's not huge up there, but maybe even a replicated bell or something to go back up there would be pretty great.
Okay. Thank you, James, for joining us there. Mr. Broderick, are you comfortable with that, or do you have any further?
No, I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Broderick. I see Councillor Walker. I believe you're next, and then I believe Mr. McKechnie. Councillor Walker, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. When I looked at your official design, I thought, well, that looks great. And then I wondered, looking at the parking out the back, was there any thought given to just having 3 lots instead of 4 and having your parking out on the east end where you could put your building without worrying about your boundaries and your setbacks, but then create a green space at the back of the school that would back onto the neighboring properties behind? Was there any thought into that type of design set up? And I realize that would set the entrance to your condominium a little differently than present now, but I just wondered if that was something that was even discussed, because to me, it would make sense to have the green space out back for the 11 people in the condominiums, the parking to your east for your snow, then snow plowing and stuff there would not interfere with a whole lot of anything. I just wondered if that had been thought of. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. To Celeste, or start with you, Celeste. You're leading this team.
Sure.
So,
through you, Mayor Measures, to Councillor Walker. It has taken us a little bit of time to get this application to you because we have explored all sorts of different opportunities for these lands. At one point, we were talking about doing some townhouses on Collingwood Street and maybe some townhouses on Caroline Street. Then we looked at semi-detached units and landed on the fact that probably the best and most palatable use for the community was single detached lots. So those 4 detached lots are lots of record, so they already exist. In light of the comments and the concerns about the parking area at the back, I have discussed with the owner some possibilities of how we could improve that situation. You will recall that the parking is at the front now, so the intent was to make the front quite a lovely landscaped area and with good street appeal. We have talked about perhaps shaving a little bit of land from the single detached lots to the west and perhaps trying to move some parking in that area and perhaps a community garden. So those are the types of conversations we're still having, but we hadn't really thought of giving up a lot just for parking purposes. That would be something that we would have to discuss further.
Councillor Walker, are you comfortable there?
Yes, I am, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, thank you, Celeste, for that answer. Councillor McKechnie, I see you're next.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions, so I'll just ask a couple here and then let other people ask. Just wondering, has that area ever flooded in the past? That's one question. Regarding the parking, I noticed there's only 1 disabled parking spot. Is that an appropriate number of disabled parking for that size of a unit? Should it be more than 1? Maybe one other question here. Let me have a look. So on the artist rendering on slide number 6, it shows lot number 4, the one which is east of the school. I'm looking, I see like 3 buildings on that. I can only assume that those are not sort of planned as houses there. They must have been from maybe a previous plan or something. You're only going to have 1 building there, right, on lot number 4?
That's correct.
So, okay. So, and would any of these units be considered affordable housing at all? Do you have a price range or anything yet for?
No, Councillor McKechnie. Sorry, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
No.
Councillor McKechnie, no, we haven't had a discussion about affordable housing at all. When we were looking at the most recent plan with the singles, those would be single detached lots that are likely to be in the same price point as other houses in the area. When we were looking at the affordable option, that would be more likely to be townhouses or semi-detached units. And we moved on from that concept and moved to a single detached because of the established residential neighborhood. The artist rendering on that slide, there's only 1 house that would be proposed on lot 4, to answer that question. And your first question about flooding, I'm not aware that there's been any flooding, but perhaps others in the community might know, or perhaps you, Mayor Measures, if you have any knowledge of any flooding of the school.
I have been here for a while, but I don't have any specific knowledge of that. But I could ask perhaps Mr. Hurley and his engineering team if they have any research on that, or if they've put any comment on that. Dan?
Through your worship to Councillor McKechnie, we don't have any, we did do some research. We don't have any records of that particular area being flooded as a result of the Mad River itself. There are probably some old drainage infrastructure on the site itself that in the past may have, they need to be replaced. So that would be dealt with through this development.
And one thing I would add,
Thank
Mr. Mayor, I think there's one of the comments that was concern about flooding, and as Dan mentioned, we'll be working with the Conservation Authority. We do have comments from them, but I did want to make a point that there would not be any residential dwellings in the basement of the current institutional building. That area would be used for mechanical room and for owner storage.
Okay, that's a good point. There's no basement apartments.
No.
That's actually a very good point. Thank you for sharing that part. Councillor McKechnie, did you have any further or anything else?
Well, if you don't mind, then I'll just ask the question regarding the disabled parking. So the drawing only shows one disabled parking. Just wondering if that's appropriate, whether there should be more than one. I don't know what the rules are, for that many units in that building, how many disabled parking spots. But anyway, so that's my question. Will there be another? Will there only be one disabled parking space? And then also too, when I look at the artist rendering, I'm looking at the covered parking, and it looks like it's open-sided on all 3 sides, or 4 sides actually. Is that the way that you're planning on going with the covered parking, or will it be entirely enclosed?
Okay, Councillor, let's go to Rosalind first, because I think she has an answer for you regarding disabled parking, and then we could discuss with Celeste and her team. Rosalind first.
Thank you. So the barrier-free parking does meet the current zoning requirements. And that would certainly, so we do have a minimum, there's a range generally. So over 25 parking spaces is generally when you start needing to have multiple barrier-free spaces. It doesn't preclude though that if they wanted to add another barrier-free spot, then they certainly could. But it isn't actually having to be exempted in this bylaw, so it actually meets the bylaw. So.
Currently. Okay. All right. So let's go to Celeste and her team on the alternate question about the actual structure there in the parking garage.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McKechnie, right now, I think we're showing that it's fairly open-sided, that parking structure, but again, we need to first establish the principle of development, and then the architectural plans will go to township staff for site plan review. So certainly that's something that we can discuss. And I know that there is concern about the headlights perhaps shining into the properties to the south. And I think it will be important to have that 2-meter high closed board fencing. And if there's an opportunity to move that parking a little further away, we'd certainly be able to do that. But at this time, we're not cast in stone as far as the look of that covered parking area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to other members of committee. Anybody else with any questions? Anything further? Any follow-ups? Yes, Councillor Lamers. Glad to have you back. Go ahead.
It looks like I'm not the only one having internet problems. That's the 3rd time tonight I got kicked off. With the hold symbol, do they have prior applications for water and sewer, or are they on hold until the sewer maintenance is completed? And the 4 extra lots that you said were already there, do they have prior reservations to the water and sewer lines?
That's an excellent question. I'll start with Rosalind, and I'm wondering if that's a Mike Braun question too. Rosalind?
Thanks. I'm happy to defer to Mike.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll welcome Mike Braun to the meeting. Mike is our Director of Public Works. So, Mike, you have a comment to help Councillor Lamers and this committee here and understand that concern.
Certainly, Your Worship. Can you hear me all right? I don't often wear these.
Good.
Yeah, so there was a report that did go to council last October. It was an update for the Creemore water and wastewater capacity. That report, showed that we had around 108 units of sewer capacity available, and I think it was around 147 water. So this development falls within that 108 units, right? First come, first served basis. And, with everything that's currently planned in Creemore, no concerns at this time, Your Worship and Councillor Lamers.
All right, thank you, Mr. That. Mr. Lamers, anything further on that line of question, or you got anything further you'd like to ask?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ron, for joining us. Thank you. Is there anybody else with any questions or comments to the committee or to the applicant? All right. I'd like to take an opportunity to ask a couple, if I may. It was brought up about the parking garage, and well, it's not really a garage, like a covering. Two things. Would the owners consider installation of solar collectors on that garage roof? Is that something they could do to provide, an opportunity for hydroelectric generation right there on that roof? And the other aspect, the roof itself would be in that current configuration where it's listed on the drawing. Rainwater would be running off of that roof pretty well directly right onto the drainage corridor that was shown in your drawing, Dan. And I'm wondering if you would have a collector along there, if there's some way to prevent that water from going into the neighbors, or would there be what would be the engineering to sort of offset that water that's coming off that roof? Celeste or Dan? Probably Dan.
I'll start through you, Your Worship. So we have to work. We'll work through the detailed drainage. What we've discussed with the landowner is trying to incorporate as many green technologies as we can, whether that is possibly some greening of the roof itself and or rain gardens at the back. But we have to have drainage infrastructure along the back of that property that makes sure it can collect any water that gets there and get conveyed out to the street and make sure it doesn't encroach on a private property. So we have some preliminary designs on that, but we'll be working through that with the owner and the township through the design process. But those are good suggestions, as well as the solar panel. And I'm not sure if Mr. Massey wants to weigh in on that.
There you go. Modern building and practices he's putting on the chat. Okay, very good, James. I'm sure that will be incorporated. I just think that that's a great opportunity to recognize that our vehicles, by the time this is built, we're going to be seeing more and more demand for electric. So I thought it's just an opportunity for this committee to see something like that. So that's the one question I had. I want to go back to drainage if I can, Mr. Hurley. The three lots that are to the west, backyard water drainage from those sites, as well as any potential sump pumping that may come from those three new buildings. You're comfortable that drainage could drain into that rear yard drainage, which could be collected on the school lot, that lot, whatever it is, that school lot, and then conveyed out to Collingwood Street? Is that sort of the design that you're looking at?
Correct. That's the design. There'll be some like retention provided there through probably a rain garden or such, but we'll make sure that the drainage can get from west to east past that parking area out to Collingwood Street. That in fact is the concept. And if necessary, we'd provide easements or any access allowances to make sure that drainage path is protected if there's different owners.
Yeah, exactly, because I assume that the intent would be that the lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 would eventually be sold, right? I mean, they would no longer be in the ownership of this building. So we want to make sure that water has right to transit across that property, right? In a community drainage system. So good. Okay, I just wanted to ask that. I mean, that type of issue does come up in our township occasionally, as we're, as you know, we're a rural community with urban centers, as we have these, mix of drainage situations that pop up, and that's one of them. So I thought I'd just bring that to your attention. I have no further questions myself. So if there's anything further, nobody else. All right. Well, it's been a very good meeting. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to read the script to conclude the meeting. So this concludes the public meeting with respect to file number 2022-007 ZB 35 Caroline Street West in Creemore Township of Clearview for this evening's agenda. We thank all who attended and provided comments for their interest in the matter, and all input received with regard to the proposal will be fully considered by staff in their recommendation and by council in their decision with respect to this application. A report regarding the proposal will be prepared for council, who will make a decision concerning this matter at a future meeting. So I'll thank again Rosalind Workman and members of our staff that have joined us for this public meeting. So this officially concludes the public meeting portion of this special council meeting agenda. Thank you. Council, we're going to revert back to our council agenda. Our council agenda includes the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. How's that? Recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw number 22-29 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the April 27, 2022 special council meeting be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 27th day of April 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder on this button? Broderick and Walker, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? And the confirmatory bylaw carries. Thank you. Council, we need to go to a motion to adjourn. Before we do that, I do want to acknowledge that it was sent out to me that we should acknowledge that this is what is it, Mr. CAO? It's a special assistance day or an assistance day, a professional assistant, professional executive assistance day or something like that.
Administrative assistance.
What did you call it again, John?
Administrative Assistance Day.
That's the day. They're so great to have so many great days. So we do have some great administrative assistants here at the Township of Clearview. Thank you all for your work and your support of our township. So I just wanted to state that. So thank you, John, for chipping that in on me. Council, motion to adjourn. Recommendation be it resolved the council meeting be adjourned at 7:55 p.m. Can I have a mover and seconder on that motion? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Deneen, any questions? All those in favor? And we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this special meeting. As I said at the beginning, if you have any comments about the way we're conducting these special meetings, please share them with the clerk and myself, and we'll be happy to review them.